Well, hello there, music lovers, and welcome back to the Woodshed. This week I got a very interesting text from a man, Ben Eller. Ben said, Andy, I want to do a Killswitch episode, but I need some help getting that tone on the axe effects. Can you help me out? I said, no problem, bro. I love those records. I love Heartache. I love My Curse. I love all that stuff. Let me dig into the axe effects and see what I can do. So I made a checklist of all the things that I think of when I think of that Killswitch Engage guitar tone. EMGs, double tracking, down tune, a lot of gain, be careful with the low end. So let's jump in and let me walk you through how to build a Killswitch-esque kind of guitar tone. Alrighty, so first things first, obviously Killswitch used their guitars, right? And they used their amps and their pedals. I'm immediately not using any of that gear. Like the Van Halen video, I'm having to kind of emulate it through the help of the Fractal, the axe effects. Now this is beneficial because I can just email friends the preset. Once I make a preset, it can go online on my website, etc. So let's get into this thing. What I want to do is tell you what really makes the Killswitch thing the Killswitch thing to me. And that is the doubling aspect of it, right? So how do you do it when you're the only guitar player? How do you sound like two guitar players that's double tracked? Because to me, the fundamental tone outside of it's outside of Adam's hands, it's the fact that it's double tracked, and that's in a lot of that, My Curse and End of a Heartache and all that stuff. And so how do you emulate that? Well, I tried to mess around with a couple of things. I got some cool ideas in here within the axe effects. So first things first, I have to choose an amp and a cabinet. And again, it's complicated because you're dealing with twos of everything, right? Two guitar players, two different guitars, two different amps, two different cabs, et cetera, et cetera. So we're trying to do this with just one guy, one guitar, one set of hands. Starting with the signal chain first, this is an LTD that my good buddy Travis Wyrick, who owns Lakeside Studios, let me borrow. And this right here is the EMG 8185 set. And in my opinion, there's no way to get this done without EMGs. Now, those that know me know I'm not an EMG player, but these pickups have a thing. Like, you have to use these pickups to get the tone. So, where did I start? Surprisingly, I did not start with what is visually their amp. I ended up starting with an SLO 100. I thought that this amp sounded closer to the isolated guitar tracks than some of the other amps in the axe effects. I actually compared it to the Block Letter EVH, and this amp sounded more like it. And again, when you're dealing with modeling, you're dealing with a capture process. So don't tweak, and don't edit with your eyes, edit with your ears. In no way, shape, or form am I saying this is exactly it. This isn't a profile. This is just what I hear when I heard the isolated guitar tracks to My Curse. That's kind of the song that I'm using as a reference point. That's one of my favorite songs and my favorite riffs and stuff like that. So let's start with the amp. SLO 100, the drive is back. We're going to get to that in a minute. The chug aspect of this is interesting because it's big and it's low endy, but there's not a lot of low end in the tone. Let's go to the cabinet model. Okay. So far it doesn't sound like Killswitch at all. It really doesn't. But I'm looking for certain frequencies in there. Okay. I'm looking for certain responses of frequencies. So let's isolate this SLO 100 red wires. Let's solo that out. So to me, that's where the dark, chuggy thing is. It's in that cabinet. And it's almost got like a weird mid Q on it, right? I think that's really important. Now let's solo out the recto cab. This is a 57, which I think everybody in the recording industry uses, and then it's on a recto cab. So let's solo this out. That's a really kind of harsh, gnarly frequency. If you reference the Guitar World magazine interview, I think it's Joel and Adam, and if you reference that, the tone sounds more like this. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's got to be a mainstay of the tone. Now, if you notice, I've got the decibels rolled back a lot. And so the reason is I want to get most of the meat and most of the chug from this SLO cabinet. Let's hear them both. Now it's starting to sound a little bit like it. And by that, I mean just the fundamental low end. That's what I'm working on right now, the low end and the low mid. Now, how do I get the gain and the teeth to come through? Well, they all swore by those Tube Screamer clones, the Maxon Tube Screamer clone. So let's just grab one of those. If you see, I'm just using an 808. Drive is way back, tone's kind of notched up, and the level's pretty hot. Now let's hear it. Now I'm starting to get that bark. Okay, so it's starting to get there. Now let's get to the meat and potatoes, which is how to double it, okay? So the doubling aspect is going to happen in two ways. I'm going to use this enhancer block, and I'm going to use a dual stereo mono delay right here. So I said everything except the right thing. I'm using a digital mono delay right there. So first things first, let's turn on the delay. Take a look at what I got going on. 10 milliseconds, panned all the way to the left, and the mix is pretty low, okay? Let's listen to the tone without it. Okay, let's listen to the tone with it. So I'm starting to emulate the fact that I've got a double-tracked signal, okay? There's one little detail that I didn't address in the cab block. And if you look here in the room air settings, I'm going to have to pull that up just a little bit so you can see it. I've got a little bit of room level, and I've got a little bit of air happening. Okay, to me, if you listen to the isolated tracks, I'm not talking about the final mix, I'm talking about the isolated tracks on YouTube, they have this like airy kind of tone to it. So let's hear it with the delay. Now listen for the air. It sounds like you're in the room a little bit with the cabinet. So we're starting to get there. It's starting to sound like two guitars. Okay, next stop, enhancer block. Boom, turn it on. Now look, 50%, 50%, nothing crazy's happening. Let's hear it without it. I'll tell you what, let's hear it without the delay. Let's not fool our ears. Now it's back down the middle, okay? Enhancer block. So there's some width happening in the image. You know, for this part. For that kind of thing. Now let's bring in the delay. So it's really starting to sound like that. There's one more detail we need to get into, okay? So now we've got our left and right. Actually, there's two more details, but now we've got our left and right image happening, okay? And it sounds like I'm in the record. And that's what I'm trying to do here. When you play by yourself, when Ben's going to play this for his video, he is going to be playing a solo guitar track. He's not going to go through the trouble of doubling everything left and right, and I just want it to feel like the record, like the album. That's the thing. So the stereo image and the low end were my two biggest priorities in trying to get something that feels like Killswitch, right? Ben's not playing my curse. I don't know which song he's doing. I can't match exactly whatever. He might be doing 100 songs in a video. I don't know. I need something that just sounds Killswitch-esque in the amp and the cabinets, right? And I need stereo image, because what's the one thing that's on every Killswitch song? It's this wide stereo, double-tracked, Def Leppard of heavy metal kind of thing, right? And I love this band, so I want to do this with respect. Now, there's two more things that I have to mention. One, you better crank on that noise gate. You better do it, or everything's going to be roaring out of control. These pickups are just like nuclear weapons in a guitar, and we've got a tube screamer on an SLO-100. It's roaring, baby. We got gain for days. The second thing I want to add is a parametric EQ with just a little dip in the mids. Now, depending on the song that Ben's going to do, he can grab any frequency in here. Like, look, any of these frequencies. But if you look at what I'm dipping, I'm taking it around 800. You know, I'm just being... like, that's my number, okay? That's kind of like one of the stock numbers for this frequency, and I dipped it, and I changed the Q just a little bit to widen it. Let's hear the tone without the para. I know you guys are going to yell at me if I don't play the riff right, so there's actually this little double stop slide at the top of it. Listen at it. So there's that thing. Okay, now don't yell at me. I'm not a Killswitch cover band guy. Let's turn on the para. So you see how I didn't look for another amp to change that. I looked for the fundamental core in the low mids. I looked for the low end, and I looked for this air, and I looked for all these things that didn't have to do with the amp. And guess where I looked? Not the amp block, right? A lot of guys are like searching through amp blocks looking for things that don't have anything to do with an amp, like the spacing on the note, the spacing on the chug, the distance of microphone to cabinet placement, where it's at. When I found the core fundamental tone, is something I talk about all the time, fundamental core tone. When I found that in the SLO-100 and the cabinet model, like this isn't the amp they used. I know that. This isn't the cab they used, but it feels like a Killswitch kind of tone, right? And again, let's emphasize that every song and every record has a different EQ curve. So I'm not trying to match anything specifically. I just pulled up some isolated tracks to my curse, and I listened to all the things on the note. And that's what I found. When I actually wanted to clean up the tone to give it that scooped metal edge, I did that in the parametric EQ. Let's turn the para off. Now let's turn it on. I mean, boom, right there. Now we're starting to really get in the wheelhouse. Let's play the riff, right? Right? So it starts, especially on those, you really need that gate to shut the door on that. So to me, I feel like I'm within 80% of the Killswitch tone. I didn't make myself crazy going across the internet looking for all these details. I just used a process of like elimination on what do I hear before I hear the EQ, right? That's really important to me, is like, what do you hear before you hear the EQ? I hear double tracking. The number one thing I hear in Killswitch is double tracking, so that's where I spent my efforts. And where did we do it? With the delay, with a combination of a delay block that was panned. Here's a reminder. Boom, boom, 10 milliseconds. Feedback is really important. The feedback's got to be at 0. You don't need it to keep feeding back. You need it to just be one hit. Excuse me. You just need it to be one hit after your main hit, right? You don't need any feedback. 14% mix. I just rolled it in to where it started sounding wide. The other thing, enhancer block, stock settings, sounded like it sounded like if you put a stereo imager on it, you know. I got my noise gate on, got my tube screamer in front of my high gain amp. I used some cabs to kind of shape out what I was after. Remember, we used the room level, and we used these two cabinets to kind of get it done, okay? And then when I actually started to listen to EQ, I simply used my fundamental signal chain that I built and dipped an EQ 4.2 decibels across this like mid Q kind of thing. So I feel like it's pretty close. Most important thing, you got to have EMG 8185s. None of my other guitars would even sound close. It's really important. I don't play this style of music often, but when I do, I want to make sure I'm using the right guitar, okay? I know those guys have used various guitars over the years, but they always have EMG pickups, okay? So I hope this video was helpful, and this preset will be for sale on my website, andywoodmusic.com. If you're a Patreon member, I'll be giving it away, so make sure to join Patreon, Andy Wood Music. And I can't wait to hear what Ben does with this. Now, I don't know what guitar he's going to use, so he might use a tweak here or there. But in general, I feel like this is pretty close. Thanks for hanging out. This week, we might have a double week of Woodshed episodes. Typically, I do one a week, but there's a hot topic in the community, mental health, social media, being a guitar player. The combination of this is, it can be dangerous, you know, and a fellow Sir artist recently stepped away from social media. He needed a break, and I think it's going to be an interesting topic. So we might have 2 episodes this week. I just got this text from Ben, and I wanted to help him out, and I figured it'd be cool to share it with you guys. I hope you enjoy it. See you next time.